Hi, this is Jack Stanley, and I'm standing in front of the Hudson Theatre. You would never think that the Hudson Theatre would have a connection to the RMS Titanic, but it does. In fact, the Hudson Theatre today is part of the Millennium Hotel. The Hudson Theatre was built in 1903 by Henry B. Harris and his wife Rene Harris. Henry B. Harris was a phenomenal producer. Rene had a wonderful nose for theatre. Collectively, they made an amazing team. Henry B. Harris was also the treasurer for the Lambs Club, which is the oldest theatrical organization in New York City. They worked hard. They made the Hudson Theatre a phenomenal place. The interior was partially designed with Tiffany effects. It was one of the most beautiful theaters on Broadway. This is where a great deal of society used to go. This is where the Astors used to go to theater. This is where the Guggenheims would go, and indeed the Strausses. The Harrises didn't take many vacations, but finally they did. They went to Europe and they joined many of their friends, and they all collectively came home. You have to remember, years ago, the rich used to travel in packs. They all decided to come home on the RMS Titanic. Now, we all know what happens with the Titanic, but there's an awful lot more to the story. Rene Harris, during the voyage, happens to slip on the staircase. The main staircase, breaks her wrist. Her wrist is put into a cast, and she becomes the great deal of attention for the entire ship. Captain Smith is constantly paying attention to her. Everyone is watching after her. The night that she happened to break her wrist is the night that the RMS Titanic struck the iceberg. In fact, Rene Harris and her husband Henry were in their stateroom playing a game of double Canfield, and they didn't even notice the Titanic struck the iceberg. The only thing that Rene Harris noticed was that her dresses stopped shaking because the ship had stopped moving. Now, she and Henry had a love affair that was incredible. They adored each other. And so while the ship was sinking, John Jacob Astor put his wife into a lifeboat, stepped back out, begged Rene to get into a lifeboat. She refused to leave her husband. Finally, through the advice of Isidor Straus. Isidor Straus and Ida Straus were the owners of Macy's in New York. Isidor Straus turned to her and said, "We are old, we have lived our lives together, and we will die together. You are young, you have your life ahead of you. May God be with you." And he basically made her go into the last lifeboat to leave the ship. Henry, of course, was not saved. She came back to a theater that was empty. It was an all-boys network, and she did something that was most incredible. She became the first producer on Broadway who was a woman. The first female producer on Broadway was Rene Harris, and where did it all start? Right here at the Hudson Theatre. The face of Broadway started to change. She gave a start to Barbara Stanwyck. She got Louis Armstrong on stage. She gave Moss Hart a good push of encouragement. In the 1930s, this theater became a radio studio. Lots of radio shows were done here. In the 1950s, this became a television studio. This is where The Tonight Show started. This is where Barbra Streisand was on stage for the first time. This theater has more history than almost any other theater here on Broadway. And the amazing part of a lot of this was the entire face of Broadway changed because of the loss of the RMS Titanic.